The air hung heavy with the weight of unpaid bills and unspoken worries. It was a familiar feeling in the Thompson household, a constant companion to their meager existence. John, the father, worked tirelessly at the local factory, his calloused hands a testament to his daily grind. Each day bled into the next, an endless cycle of shifts and sleep, all for the promise of keeping a roof over their heads and food on the table. His wife, Mary, bore the weight of their circumstances with quiet strength, her days consumed by stretching their limited resources and caring for their two children, 8-year-old Billy and his little sister Lily. Their small apartment, though meticulously kept, whispered tales of their daily struggles. The furniture, hand-me-downs from more fortunate times, bore the scars of wear and tear. The walls, painted a pale yellow that had long since lost its vibrancy, held within their faded embrace the echoes of laughter and tears, of dreams dreamt and hopes deferred. Yet, amidst the constant struggle, love found a way to bloom. It flickered in the shared smiles across a dinner of beans and cornbread, in the bedtime stories whispered with quiet tenderness, and in the unwavering spirit that bound them together. Billy, a bright spark in their often difficult world, possessed a resilience that belied his tender years. He understood, in the way that children often do, the silent sacrifices his parents made, the weight they carried on their shoulders. He never complained, finding joy in the simplest of things: a shared game of catch with his father, a walk to the park with his mother, the comforting weight of his dog, Buster, curled up at his feet as he drifted off to sleep. He dreamt of a life less ordinary, of a world filled with adventures and possibilities, but for now, he found solace in the love that surrounded him, a love that, despite their hardships, shone as brightly as any star in the night sky. School had just started, and with it came the excitement of new beginnings and the thrill of fresh notebooks and sharpened pencils. But for Billy, this year held a different kind of anticipation. His worn-out shoes, held together by hope and his mother's careful stitching, had finally given up the ghost. He desperately needed a new pair, not for vanity, but for dignity. He yearned to run and play without the fear of his shoes completely falling apart, to walk with the confidence that only a new pair of shoes could bring. One evening, with a mix of hope and hesitation in his eyes, Billy approached his father. John was seated at the kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows across his weary face as he meticulously worked on a pile of bills. Billy, clutching his tattered shoes, summoned all his courage and made his request, his voice barely above a whisper. John, his brow furrowed in concentration, paused his task and listened intently, his gaze softening as he took in his son's hopeful expression and the sight of the worn-out shoes. "A new pair of shoes, son?" John asked, his voice heavy with the weight of their financial constraints. Billy nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew it was a big ask, a luxury they could ill afford. He watched as his father ran a hand through his tired face, a deep sigh escaping his lips. John looked at his son, his heart aching at the unspoken plea in those big, innocent eyes. He knew how much a new pair of shoes would mean to Billy, how it would boost his confidence and allow him to walk with his head held high. "Okay, son," John finally said, forcing a smile onto his weary face. "I promise, as soon as I get paid next week, we'll get you those new shoes." The relief that washed over Billy's face was like a ray of sunshine piercing through the clouds. He threw his arms around his father, his small body vibrating with joy. "Thank you, Dad! You're the best!" he exclaimed, his voice brimming with happiness. The following week arrived, bringing with it the familiar sting of disappointment. John's paycheck, already stretched thin, seemed to evaporate before his very eyes. The leaky roof needed urgent repairs, the ever-growing stack of bills demanded attention, and an unexpected medical expense for little Lily depleted their already meager savings. The promise of new shoes for Billy, though etched in John's mind, became another casualty in their daily struggle for survival. Each night as John lay in bed, the weight of his unfulfilled promise pressed down on him. He could see Billy's hopeful face, hear the echo of his excited voice, and his heart ached with a guilt he couldn't escape. He vowed to make things right, to find a way to fulfill his promise, but life, it seemed, had other plans. Days turned into weeks, then months, and still, Billy remained patient, his trust in his father an unwavering beacon in their storm-tossed world. He never complained, never whined, but the disappointment in his eyes whenever he looked at his worn-out shoes was a constant reminder of John's broken promise. John would often catch his son staring at his shoes, his small shoulders slumped with a sadness that tore at John's heart. He would try to distract his son with a game of checkers or a shared story, but the guilt lingered, a bitter taste in his mouth. He knew he couldn't keep putting it off. He had to find a way to fulfill his promise, to ease the burden of disappointment that he saw growing in Billy's eyes. He owed it to his son, to himself, to honor his word and reclaim the trust that was slowly eroding with each passing day. The school year marched on, a relentless calendar of weeks and months. Winter descended, blanketing their small town in a layer of cold indifference. Billy, bundled in layers of hand-me-down clothes, braved the icy sidewalks in his worn-out shoes, his small feet soaked and cold. He no longer mentioned the promise of new shoes, but the unspoken plea in his eyes whenever he looked at his father was a constant reminder of John's failure. One particularly harsh evening, as John made his way home from another grueling shift, he noticed a group of children huddled together, their laughter echoing in the crisp winter air. As he drew closer, he saw Billy standing at the edge of the group, his thin jacket pulled tightly around him. He was watching the other children, their faces flushed with excitement as they showed off their new winter boots. John's heart sank. He saw the longing in Billy's eyes, the way he subtly tucked his worn-out shoes beneath his coat, as if trying to hide them from the world. John watched as Billy, his face pale with cold, turned and walked away from the group, his small shoulders slumped with a defeat that was far too heavy for a child to bear. John's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to rush to his son, to shield him from the harsh realities of their life, to promise him the world, but he knew that words were hollow, empty vessels without the weight of action. He had failed his son, not just in the material sense, but in the currency of trust, of keeping his word. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. His son, his bright, resilient son, was slowly losing hope, his spirit chipped away by the weight of unmet expectations. He had to do something, not just for Billy, but for himself, for the father he wanted to be, for the man he knew he could be. He stood there for a long moment, the icy wind whipping at his face, and made a silent vow. He would not let life's distractions extinguish the light in his son's eyes. He would find a way, no matter the cost. If you found Billy's story moving, please subscribe and share this video to help spread awareness.